time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jeanette Anderson, and today I'm here with the fabulous Wendy Leggett, who is here from, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Huntington Beach, California.
Oh, poor you. Okay, so that's awesome. So happy to have you here, Wendy. Today we're going to be talking about a really cool topic that I know is near and dear to many of your hearts. We're going to be talking about retirement and the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly, about retirement planning, what to think about. And by the way, retirement doesn't necessarily have to look any one way. It could be you in a side hustle. It could be your retirement is you doing a different job. It could be you taking time off to go and chase those bucket list adventures. So we are going to have a really interesting conversation around what it means to retire, what the pros and the cons are. Today we're talking about retirement beyond expectations. We'll explain that more later. Investing in yourself. So great topic, Wendy. Glad you're here.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. I love your energy. I know your listeners do as well, and it'll be fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I will tell you the official word about Wendy so that you get some background and context. And then we're going to find out the juicy, salacious details behind the scene. I didn't tell her I was looking for salacious, but we'll see what happens. And then we're going to talk about this topic. So Wendy Leggett is an ICF professional certified coach, transforms the retirement experience by helping clients elevate their awareness, intentions, and actions beyond financial planning. With 25 years in corporate sales leadership, Wendy founded Conflux. Did I pronounce that right? Conflux?
You got it.
Yeah, Conflux Retirement Coaching, applying her expertise in customer service, goal achievement, and action orientation. Her specialized training from the Retirement Coaches Association and research-based retirement life plan deepens her ability to guide individuals, couples, and groups through the transition into and through retirement, ensuring a fulfilling and purpose-driven journey. Oh, that last line is so important. You know, what people may or may not know is that later in life, actually any time in life, but especially later in life, having purpose or meaning adds 7 qualitative years to your life, meaning you'll be happier and healthier. So this is an important conversation to listen to, and it is important to do some navel gazing at this point in our life and find that purpose again, re-clarify it, recommit to it, whatever it may be. At this point, perhaps more than any other time in life. So glad we're going to be talking about that as well. So welcome. That's on the official bio. Now, we want to know the things we would never guess about you, and the juicier the better, but whatever we would never guess about you might be something your friends don't even know. It's certainly nothing you have on your website. Tell us something that would surprise us, Wendy.
I'll do that, but I have to just soften it that it won't be juicy, it won't be salacious, but I'll try to come up with something for the next time we chat.
Okay.
Be a little more intriguing. What I want to share is that through the course of, I think I had met with a therapist in different discussions quite a while ago. She brought up this concept of being a highly sensitive person in HSP. And I don't know if all of you have heard of that before, but there was a book then that she referred me to by Elaine Aron, PhD, and I read it, and I have to tell you, it struck me at my core because it was like I was reading about my life. And I think that was a breakthrough for me because I'd always, when I was, not always, but when I was younger, I was often told that I was very emotional, I was too sensitive, and I carried that around in a way of kind of shame or feeling like then I had to play differently. And I think as I went into corporate, I also put up that armor, feeling as though, then I can't be that way. There's something wrong. Yes. And so then that carried on for quite a long time in my life. I mean, I softened it a bit, but then reading that book and seeing what that looks like, I don't believe in labels. That's just my bent. I don't believe in labels. So it's not that I'm an HSP, but what I do believe is that it opened this pathway for me to have an understanding and appreciation, and then say, you know, I understand why I've been that way, and also see pathways to then move forward and leave some of that behind. So
I
that's
am so glad you shared that, because I think that that is one of the things that a lot of people carry shame about, and they get that kind of messaging: you're too sensitive, you're too this, you're too emotional, you're too that, especially as we're growing up. And that does have us shut down our expression, shut down our sensitivity, shut down our intuition. And
yeah,
so it's a really important component to bring up and say, and no, that is okay. And there are ways to be that without it being wrong or,
yes, yeah.
squished, and to have it be very functional and wonderful. So thank you for mentioning that. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not juicy or salacious, but it is kind of juicy, actually. And I think it's a really important conversation too. And I love the point around no labels. So I know why I think having no labels is important, but tell me why you don't believe in labels.
I don't believe in labels because I feel as though we're put in a box. And
Yeah.
when we're put in that box, then we don't see the possibilities beyond it. I'm a big person in seeing possibilities. I think a box is a black or a white, and I believe in the gray. I believe in everything in between. So I'm saying that simply, but that's how I feel. What about you?
Yeah.
What's
Well, as similar, I think it limits our sense of who we are. We like to attach to identities. We like to say, I'm a that, I'm a this, I'm an Aries, I'm a, woman, I'm a this, I'm a that. And we get used to being those labels and identifying that's who we are, as opposed to our being, which I think is very limiting. And especially later in life, one of the biggest challenges that people have is, what am I if I'm not that? What if I am no longer an executive?
mm,
What if I am no longer a CEO? What if I am no longer a mom or a caretaker or whatever? When we get too attached to labels, we can tend to lose sight of the fact that we aren't those things. We aren't those
yeah,
labels.
I love that. I a lot of my work really revolves around this concept of the difference between roles and identity. And
Mm,
I feel like that's what you're sharing here, is that idea that roles don't define who we are, they define what we're doing.
yes.
But the essence of us, the true nature of us is always there. And so again, I focus on retirement, and it's a matter of, yes, you're leaving career, you're leaving that role behind, but oftentimes people's identity is so interwoven with their work. I like to say that if you are what you do, who are you when you don't?
Yeah.
Because people can leave pieces of themselves behind in that career. Or
Yeah.
for any of your listeners that are embarking then on their next adventure or venture, really just thinking about what are they bringing with them, but not thinking about that now they've left so much of themselves behind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hang on, you said a really good bumper sticker quote there that I'm writing down, so that I can post it in the Facebook group right after this. If you are what you do, who are you when you don't? I love that, Wendy. I think that's a brilliant way to just kind of consider it. And deep, deep. We've gone deep already. Good. All right.
Well, our work is done here.
Exactly done. Okay, that was a good mic drop. Away we go. So tell me a little bit about your why. What's your purpose in life? Because I know obviously we're going to talk about your passion about supporting people through and with on retirement, but that hasn't always been your purpose. So what's your purpose?
Yeah, I where I'm at right now is that idea that helping people really bring their true self forward. And I'll share a little more behind that. I focus mainly on people that are in the baby boomer generation, 1946 born to 1964, because that's that typical retirement age. And I'm part of that generation as well. And we were not raised with positive psychology. That came on the scene about 30 years ago. And with positive psychology came this appreciation of emotions, this appreciation of really looking at our feelings and giving some weight to them. But I wasn't raised with that. Our generation wasn't. And we were raised to be highly productive and efficient and no pain, no gain. and maybe suppress those emotions or push them aside. And so I feel especially compelled to help people in my generation resurrect some of that depth, really get at some of that, those emotions that have been holding them back, and that will allow them to really be that human being rather than that human doing. And so giving some space and grace to those reflections, giving some weight to those difficult emotions that are coming up as signals, not as something wrong that should be pushed away, but something to be investigated. So that kind of shares a bit about what I feel is my purpose, is
Right.
really being able to open those gateways for people.
Love it. And I love the reminder, the phrase around we're human beings, not human doings. I think we get really caught up in the do and have component of be, do, have in our society. And we think that, especially in different phases of life, we tend to be, a lot about do, and you got to go to school and you got to learn this so that you can do this, so you can have these results. And I got to have the family and the picket fence and the, Audi and the whatever. And along the way, we are not trained or reminded to be who we want to be in those journeys, in those processes. Nothing wrong with doing and having, just with the absence of bringing all of who we are.
Yeah, that wholeness.
It becomes doo-doo, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we lose our whole selves. We lose that balance. And I think, especially when people are transitioning from career to retirement, that's just an incredibly unique time to be able to really dig deep then.
Right.
And it's been overlooked during career. That at least take advantage of it now and don't carry those patterns and habits with you into now this next chapter.
So let's dive right into your topic, and then I want to kind of circle back to some of your journey. But one of the things you mentioned, that retirement planning often centers on finances. Will you have enough money to retire? And the reality is, right now, 65% of Canadians and between 50 and 90% of Americans, and this is typical, fairly standard around the world, cannot afford to retire. They don't have the means or wherewithal, and that's everywhere from food and housing insecurity to they just can't maybe take the trips and vacations and bucket list adventures they thought they were going to. They may need a side hustle, they may need to work full time, but they can't not create revenue in some way. And that's a lot more than most people are aware of. So the retirement conversation does tend to focus a lot on money. And the disservice is that we're still living in a society where people are thinking retire at 65, die at 75, but that's not the reality. Now we're living to 80, 90, 100. There's more 100-year-olds on the planet right now than there has been cumulatively in all of human history. And so, and people being born right now will live to 130. So 65 is literally middle age. So we got to shift our thinking about this. But in that process, the reality is a lot of retirement is colored by money. So I know we want to go beyond that, about it not being just totally centered on that, but a lot of it is very much colored by that. So what have you come across, and what do you tell people when they are thinking of retirement just from that perspective, just from the financial side?
Yeah, I speak to the fact that we're bringing our whole selves into retirement. It's not just our bank account. It's not just our portfolio. It's our whole selves. And so if we're only focused on the money, I rolling it back a little, I paint this scene about, let's say there's a place in the world you've always wanted to travel to. You've dreamt about it. You couldn't afford to go. It was too far out, but you kept dreaming about it, saving, scrimping, saving, sacrificing, and you finally have the money to embark and you go on that trip and you travel to this dream location. Is that all the planning that you would have done? Would you not have done some research ahead? Would you not have made plans? Would you not have thought about, what do I want to see, taste, and feel when I'm there? And what will I want to make sure that I bring back with me in memories? And I liken that to this trip into retirement. And if people don't plan beyond just having the money to make that trip or having the money to retire, then they're going to enter into it without that vision, without that recognition of where they even want to go. Because the journey, absolutely value the journey. But if we don't have some destination in mind, then we're meandering, we're floundering, and 1 in 3 struggle in retirement. And that I'm going to repeat because that's a really important statistic, that 1 in 3 struggle in retirement. And so this is, I think, that dirty little secret that has to be revealed, because when you ask somebody how's retirement, they're generally going to say it's fantastic, endless weekends, leisure, travel. But the reality is 1 in 3 of those people responding, and maybe more because it's probably underreported, is really struggling. They're feeling at loss, they're feeling disconnected, they're feeling lonely, they're feeling unmoored. And so the way that we can approach that is going in with eyes wide open, is going in not with this only idealistic view or a pessimistic view of 1 foot in the grave, but instead this realistic optimism, where we're really then embracing the reality and then capturing that vision and moving toward that vision. So
yeah, so valuable, so important. And I agree with you. I think it probably is more than 1 in 3 that struggle with especially that last thing you said, the unmoored feeling, that sense of lack of direction or lack of clarity about where is my base, where is my safe harbor, and
yeah.
where am I going next, where am I going to set sail to, and do I even want to sail, so that kind of thing. You mentioned, you touched on it briefly, and talk a little bit more about the kind of the dark side of retirement, and what people need to be aware of around that.
Yeah, well, just speaking to some of the statistics, 1 in 2, about 50% of pre-retirees don't feel mentally or socially prepared for retirement. So right there, we're then stepping into this new chapter, and again, feeling that unmoored, not feeling like we've got that foundation under our feet. I mentioned the 1 in 3 struggling. There's work that's been done, and I'm sure you're acquainted with it, by Holmes Rave around the most stressful life events, and they cited 43 of them. Retirement comes in as number 10. So, beating it out is getting married, or a loss of a loved one, or getting divorced, but loss of a job. But I think, there's that anticipatory stress, but then there's that really debilitating stress. And that statistic speaks to it too. We also see a rise in what's called graying divorces. We see a rise in addiction and alcoholism. And so it's really important to realize that there are these dark sides. And so, yes, we want to go in. I'm not wanting anybody to walk away thinking that it's not an incredibly exciting, unique opportunity in life, that you're turning the page, in your book's chapters. But at the same time, if we don't go in with eyes wide open, then we can go through that honeymoon phase, where we're enjoying the travel if we had it, or the bucket list items, or the to-do list, getting things done, and then start to feel really at a loss that, wow, is this all there is to life? As you spoke about, 20 or 30 more years, a third of our life left, and this is what it's going to be day after day. The studies also tell us that on average, retirees watch 47 hours of TV a week. So this speaks to the idea that they basically replaced a full-time job with a full-time job of watching TV. And I think that's a really critically important statistic to think about too, because even if you're nowhere close to that, if you start adding it up and then you think, wow, cognitively, how's that impacting me? Physically, how's that impacting me? Socially, how's that impacting me? So very sobering statistics speaking to that dark side.
They are, and certainly, I think it's something that people might be going, oh my goodness, that's not good, and get into all sorts of despair. But you also talked about realistic optimism. So what are some ways to contribute to being retirement ready?
Yeah. So one of the big ones, I think, is our perspective. Are we looking at it as this opportunity to open up our minds and look at the possibilities, or are we looking at it as a time of loss? So it's that kind of reframe. Are we looking at it as, pro-aging or anti-aging? Are we looking at it as getting old, or growing, and learning as we move forward? And so that whole perspective. And I do a lot of work around what's called positive intelligence, reframing those negative emotions and shifting them into ones that serve us. There's a lot of that science, I know that you're aware of the neuroscience of really being able to start to build those strong neural pathways into skewing to the positive rather than that survivor brain that skews to the negative. So
Right.
starting off with that perspective, that's where we begin.
Well, and I think that that's super important to tell better stories. That's kind of the short version that I call that. There is a science and an art behind reframing and behind positive psychology and so forth, but it comes down to telling better stories, because we tell sucky stories and then we wonder why we feel sucky, or disempowered or disconnected. And I do really think that that pro-aging component is really important. There is such we have inherent age bias within us, built into our frame of reference automatically, even if we don't think we are. I didn't realize how ageist I was. I experienced ageism outside of me at a work event, at a conference, and I was kind of like, oh, that's a thing. And then I started to read Ashton Applewhite's book, This Chair Rocks, A Manifesto Against Ageism, sorry. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had so many inherent ageist prejudices and self-reference and so forth. There's so much in our society that is geared towards making getting older feel wrong and bad. And it's not. Like, old is not a dirty word. Old is no different than young or middle-aged. There's nothing inherently right or wrong about it. It's just a stage. And so I think really examining our beliefs around ageism is super important, and telling more empowering stories, because we don't realize how ageist we are.
I'm walking down that same path, and I've been trying to educate myself as well, because there's just, I think, like that idea of, wow, you look good for your age, or there's just any number of things, using the term elderly, although scientifically, I think that term applies, but it's much further out in the horizon than we think, maybe in the late 80s or
Yeah.
early 90s or something. And even then, we're all relevant, we're all important, we're all, breathing, giving, learning organisms. And so none of us should be discounted. So, and I'm glad that you caught, yes, I spoke to the dark side of retirement, because we want to go in with eyes wide open, but there's so many ways that we can navigate it. So I don't want anyone to leave feeling like there's not so much potential and so much opportunity, because that's what I do. That's my focus. I wouldn't be caught up in something that was just a sucky downer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about identity, because I think that is one of the things that people really struggle with a lot during this phase, whether they're retiring or not, whether they're, just reinventing for various reasons. So it might be going from corporate to solopreneurship, or it might be going from married to single. It might be going, we're going through various transitions all the time, but especially as we get older, and as we move into older years that may be about retirement and may not be. I've just talked to so many people who say, I hate the word retirement, that it's hard for me to even get it out of my mouth.
I'm with you, and I'm a retirement coach. So let's speak to why, right? If the term should be retired, it did apply when people were in the factories and the fields. And that's why Social Security came about, to help support, because they were tired. And they usually expired after a couple of years after leaving the workplace. But that's long in our past. And so yet the term is not long in our past. And we will come up with a new shared vocabulary, but it's just slow in coming. I know you speak about refiring. I try to speak about rewiring or reimagining, but right now that's the word we have. But I do start off with clients asking them to define, what does retirement mean to you? And so often people are tied to that number that you brought up. They're tied to, well, you retire at 62, you retire at 65. Maybe if you really push the envelope, you retire at 66. It's a label, it's a mindset. And when I really ask, well, what is it that you're retiring to, and what are you retiring with? Those are all really important reflective questions. I had one client come to me. We were going to map out her retirement, and it came out pretty quickly in our sessions that she was retiring because of the pressure from family and friends. They had all retired early, and so they were really, putting so much pressure on her, and she was kind of abdicating to it. And yet she loved the work she was doing. She had great balance in her life. She felt very inspired. She was still growing. And so it was a really important conversation. So it's not that I abdicate retiring. What I do really, or not that I really want people to retire. I want them to retire well if that's their choice. And
Yes.
that's where I focus and work. Yeah.
Yes. I think that reminded me, and that's why I just made a little note to myself of a conversation I had with a woman here recently, Marjorie Zingle here in Calgary, who's 89, and she's launching a new tech business. She's grown her tech business. She got into technology at 69, knowing nothing about it, and created the data center. And she's the only woman in the world, I think, that owns a data center like this. And she's now taking on 20,000 extra square feet of space and launching a new business and expanding her current business at 89. And she constantly gets from her family, when are you going to slow down? When are you going to slow down? And so I said to her, I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says, I'm not slowing down. You just need to keep up. Because that is the thing. Family thinks that, oh, you should rest, you should slow down. Well, why? What is it behind that? Is it that you're feeling guilty, like you should probably be speeding up, or is it that you think that that's they earned it, and maybe they did, but what if they don't want to? Like, what is the motivation behind that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we all need t-shirts that say, I'm not slowing down, you just need to keep up, so that people get with the program. Okay,
And it does circle back to us talking about the being rather than the doing, what's important to us. And then that informs the doing. And so I thank you for sharing that story. It's very inspiring. And I was doing a presentation, and a gentleman came up at the end and he said, I loved what you shared. And when I get ready to retire, I'll definitely work with you. He's 91 and continues to own his accounting firm, and strong. So
yeah, exactly. Well, and so even really, like you said, define the word retirement, because he might be in his version of retirement, which is, and I talked to an optometrist 2 days ago. She said, I'll work till the day I die because I love what I do, and why wouldn't I? And I think there's a lot of that sense of that. It's often just that we love what we're doing. Why would we rather spend 12 hours a day in front of a TV than making the difference that we make, and getting the feedback we get, and the interaction, and the growth, and the payoff. Now, all that said, in case some of you are listening to this and going, oh my God, I just want to rest a bit, I just need a break. It is not that you have to be a dynamo starting your second tech business and award-winning tech business at 89. How do people know what is their right next chapter? How do you help them figure out what is next for me? What do I want? Because for so long, so many of those people, and I will say this, especially women, have tended to put everyone else first, and therefore answering the question, what do I want? What do I want, is a really foreign thing for a lot of people. So how do you figure out what is next?
Yeah, it is a muscle that needs to be flexed. It is something that takes some excavation and takes reflection time. And again, in the baby boomer generation, that's something that makes people oftentimes uncomfortable. And yet, when we give ourselves that space and grace to really start to key in on what feels good to me, what feels, we start with the feelings. What feels right to me? What doesn't feel right to me? So we do a lot of work around when you were young. What were the things that really gave you a spark? If no one was watching, what would you be doing? What do you wish that you'd always done? Things like that. So I have a lot of exercises around that. I also focus on that transition that you spoke to earlier, and really looking at what were the skills, capabilities, passions that we had in work that we would want to bring with us into retirement. It's not a matter that we leave everything behind. This isn't a whole new book in our life. It's a new chapter. We're not starting over. We're bringing with us those things that will serve us and being aware of the things that we want to leave behind, those habits and patterns that don't serve. And so really speaking about that transition, there's work, I'm sure you're acquainted with it, by William Bridges around transitions, prolific work around that. And he really spoke to that we begin with the ending. And so we really look at where we are right now. Let's say we're in career, and how are we going to put a period on that? Or an exclamation mark, but these are my words, but so that we have closure, and that we really recognize what have we accomplished. And again, what do we want to bring with us, leave behind? Then we move into what he calls the neutral zone. And this is, Bruce Feiler calls it the messy middle, where we're really kind of reflecting, but we're struggling, we're feeling stuck, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling lonely, we're feeling disconnected, we're feeling angry or resentful or, in denial, any kinds of things. But we sit in that space and we work through, that's what I do with clients, work through what are some of those warring emotions that you're feeling. And we can have excited ones too. We can be very anticipatory or can't wait for the freedom and all kinds of things. But generally, it tends to be that people have some struggles. And we really excavate that and we start to get that clarity around what does feel purposeful to me, what does feel meaningful to me, before we then embark on that new beginning. And I do want to highlight with purpose that I think it's such a gray area for most of us, or an elusive one, let me put it that way, because when we're in career, my belief is that we have purpose baked into our work. We have the KPIs, we have the achievement, we have the the feeling of accomplishment. We have the goals set out for ourselves. But then when we go into retirement, we can lose that feeling of purposeness because we've never really developed it. We've never really put our focus on it. So that's where I do quite a bit of focus with my clients around what does feel purposeful. And it can be a purpose with a capital P. It can be with a small p. You can have lots of different things that feel purposeful. It's not that one and you're done. And also then delving into what are our values, because we know that when our values are aligned with our actions, then we're motivated and we move forward. So we want to really pinpoint those things that feel good to us. That it's not that society told us that we should be volunteering or taking care of grandkids and that would feel purposeful, but instead what really resonates for us, because that's going to allow our whole selves to shine and bring our best selves forward. So I said a lot there, but that's those
no, and valuable the components to that too, the values, the purpose, and often it can be challenging to unearth some of those things when we haven't asked that consciously in the past. And in many cases, a lot of that is kind of right on the end of our nose. We can't really see it. That's why it really helps to get a coach, to get a mentor, to do personal growth workshops, to do therapy work, to get that sense of perspective where we can pull it back and take a look at it and go, oh, okay. And a lot of what I think is interesting, the work, doing similar work in terms of reframing beliefs and lifting the anchors of those limiting beliefs, is we often assume that the voice, because it's in our head, is our voice. One of the most beneficial questions I've ever been asked in my personal growth journey is, but whose voice is it actually? Because most of the time it's not actually our voice. It sounds like us because it's in our head, but it came from mom, or it came from dad, or from some source somewhere. We didn't come in believing we're stupid or whatever the case may be. That got instilled, and we continue the conversation, so it becomes in our voice. We think it is our belief, but it's not. So unearthing what's mine, what do I actually believe, versus the shoulds, the have tos, the old instilled beliefs, the buttons that we didn't know were installed. How do we tease those apart so that we can start to get perspective on who do I choose to be? What do I choose to believe? What is going to help me be more effective and move in the direction I want to move, and what's not? Because to me, it's not about right or wrong. It's about, does it help you or does it not? Does it make
and does it resonate with me? Does it belong with me or does it not? So no, I love that. I do speak about taking aim on retirement, just to kind of boil it down easily. So I speak about awareness and then setting your intentions and then moving into action. And I think the awareness piece is just what you're speaking to. It's just excavating that. It's digging deep, and we as coaches are there as guides, but we're not there to say what's right or wrong. We're just there to help, be that thought partner and that sounding board to bring it to the surface, so that someone, like you said, can look at it and then really say, okay, that feels good. That's the direction that for now I want to go in. And we know that, especially with retirement, we have this opportunity to experiment, to put a toe in, to try things out, to pivot. As long as we have that perspective about the possibilities and that reframe about the opportunities rather than the obstacles.
Exactly. And it's, one of the blessings of getting older, if you're fortunate enough to kind of go in this direction, is that we give less shits. Like, we have less concern about approval, we have less concern about other people's opinions about us, we have overcome a lot of the approval issues and concerns about that we grew up with. And it is so liberating to get to that point. Now, not everybody had them to start with, although I think it is an epidemic in our world. The whole, approval issue, I think, is the hardest issue to deal with. We twist ourselves into pretzels trying to be what we think other people want us to be, and in essence, cheat them and us of us. But getting older, that tends to diminish more as we recognize that it is what it is. I am what I am, doesn't mean I can't change, but and we start to have more self-compassion, more self-appreciation, those kinds of things. It becomes less about, but what if they think this or feel that, or what if they judge me or whatever, and more about what would make me feel satisfied, gratified, proud, in integrity, whatever those criteria are. Like you mentioned, the values that are important to you.
Yeah.
So once they do that awareness and reflection, then you mentioned intention. So what do you mean by that at this stage in life? What is the intention stage about?
That is really kind of getting at that feeling of what is meaningful, what is purposeful. And so really, digging into, okay, so we go through an exercise of looking at a typical day in retirement and mapping that out really hour by hour, and then looking at that week, and then taking it the next step and looking at, okay, for if I only have 5 years left in that time horizon, because we know retirement feels like this time abundance, and that it's endless, but in fact, we're only promised this very moment. And so if we then shorten that time horizon, we say, okay, now we only have 5 years. What would be the things that really bubble up? What would be surfacing as the priorities? So we focus on that, as well as, what are those vital few for you in your life that really are meaningful, that make a difference, that do speak to that why that we talked about. And then that exercise goes further in saying, okay, if you had no time left, if you really only had 24 or 48 hours left, would you have regrets? Would there be things that you really wished, that song that you never sang? And so really then being able to look at that as well, because we have that opportunity now to reflect. We have that opportunity now to really investigate, well, what would feel right? What wouldn't feel right? And what's necessary for me? And so that's where then we can start to build this intention and start to build a plan around it. I've had clients who said, oh yeah, and in 5 years, we're going to go travel to this place. And as we start speaking about it, then they oftentimes will change their time horizon, because if that was something important to them, or, I want to reach out to friends, they start to see, gosh, I'm not going to push that out. I'm going to seize the moment now. And, I have lots of examples of it. But
Yeah. And if you're doing this kind of work, whether with someone like Wendy or on your own, one of the things that I recommend is check out Randy Pausch on YouTube. Yes, YouTube or TEDx. I think it's YouTube. Randy Pausch, Pausch, The Last Lecture. Try and get the full one. MIT has a practice, which I think is brilliant, of having their professors give a last lecture as if it was the last lecture they ever gave of their life. And in his case, it actually was, because he had a terminal illness and only had 6 months to live, and was a father of 2 young boys and so forth. So it is very touching, but it's also very uplifting and funny and enlightening. But it's a wonderful notion to say, if this was my last lecture, my last speech, my last thing that I left people with, what would be important to me? What would I say? What would have been important for me to have accomplished? And then make a plan to bridge that gap if that gap's not bridged, because it's not too late as long as you're on this side of the dirt, but you better get on it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about action, because a lot of people get kind of immobilized by fear here. So what are some of your keys or tips for overcoming the fear and getting into action?
Yeah, I mean, I think we address that really in the beginning, because we start to look at those saboteurs, that avoider or pleaser or hyper vigilant or hyperachiever, that could stop us in our tracks. And so we really all along the way start to look at those obstacles that, like you said, our minds are oftentimes the ones that are putting it there, but is that really the reality? So we try to really dig in and say, what is true and what is possible. And so all along the way, we're kind of testing that. And so once we start to step into action, it's a matter of then, like I said, experimenting. It's about not filling up your dance card so much with this busyness, but instead things that are not filling time, but fulfilling time. And so, and then just really allowing ourselves to audit and pivot and say, okay, this is the path that I want to go on. But instead of jumping into things and then feeling like we're stuck, and that we've made this commitment and now we can't get out of it in any number of ways, which I think people oftentimes like jump into that new beginning, as I spoke about earlier. And so, so the action is really then taking it step by step, and really trying to prioritize and really starting to feel, okay, are these my people, or is this my place, or do I want to pepper in something else, or do I want to move in another direction? And then constantly checking back and auditing it. So a lot of my clients, once our work is done, then they'll check back with me on occasion, just to have that accountability and that staying on track and really being able to say, okay, where am I at now? But I think just that awareness alone is groundbreaking for people. That normalizing alone, to know that if I'm struggling, like I'm worried about retiring. I had one client about a year before retiring said she felt like it was a loss. I mean, she was just overwhelmed with grief about it. And so just normalizing that you're not alone, that people really can have these concerns and these negative emotions and these challenges, and that there's another, we can move through them. We're going to recognize them. We're going to understand them. We're going to dig deep, but then we're going to be able to move past it once you have a better understanding of what's really going on for you and what else is possible.
Yeah, yes. And I want to kind of go back and emphasize the point about getting into action. Action will always beget clarity, but clarity does not necessarily beget action. So those of you who are going, well, I'll get going on it when I'm clear, when I know the way path and I've got all of that, get into action. Just start with what you know.
Yes.
Go do more of what you do enjoy now. Even if you're not clear on what you do want 100%, go do more of what you do enjoy. It will be illustrative, it will guide you, it will give you more awareness. So get into action and you'll get more clarity. So I want to switch tracks real quickly to talk about your retirement. So do you consider yourself retired? And what was your journey? What's your entrepreneurial journey been like? Because you came out of corporate sales, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I was in sales leadership for about 25 years or so, working for Fortune 50s, fashion, franchises, and loved it. Loved the connection with clients, loved helping my team members elevate their capabilities, and also loved meeting those sales and service numbers, having those goals and achieving and exceeding them. So loved all of that, loved the process as well. But the last position that I was in, and really doing amazing things with it as a director of these franchises, working for a couple. And we were just crushing, all of the expectations and putting all kinds of great programs into place. And in hindsight, I think that was probably the downfall, because the company was in such great shape that they decided to sell. And so the new owner came in and had a very, very different philosophy about how he served both the team members as well as the clients. And I really tried to not embrace what he was doing, but instead tried to, be that problem solver, try to find one way or another. But it got very difficult, Jeanette, to face clients and to really carry a message to team members that did not resonate for me from the value statement. So I think sometimes out of pain, then we really do find our path. And so I finally came to that conclusion. I've tried every which way, and this is soul sucking, and I need to make a change. And so I just embarked on a search of what would work next for me. Did I want to go into a new sales opportunity, or did I want to make a change? And I read a book that kind of spoke about coaching, and it wasn't anything that I'd ever heard of. We'd, had consultants before, and I guess niche coaches, but not anything around like a life coach. And so I dug deeper and found out, oh, wow, I could go back to school and become a coach. So I went back to school, which in and of itself was just so, like I hadn't been in school for a long time. And so that was really challenging and invigorating. I remember being on Zoom with someone, and because we would do peer coaching, and at the end she said, I hope that next time you won't feel so shy about turning on your camera. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And so, and then from there, I started, because there's that saying, do what you know. And so I went into business coaching, but I found very quickly that it was more around the strategy and the tactics and the numbers. And I really, having gone through coaching, I really wanted that approach to be able to be at a different level, more transformational than transactional. Not to say that business coaches aren't transformational too, but for me, I decided to shift and found, some of those clients were struggling with retirement or considering retirement and not knowing where to go. And so again, research and found out, oh my gosh, there's this whole industry. I can get credentials. So I got several credentials in retirement coaching, as well as then with positive intelligence that I spoke to earlier.
Right. I love that. And I love that you actually did get credentialed. There's a lot of coaches, myself included. I actually have gone through a lot of training, but not certification through ICF. I've taught coaching certification courses, but I have not gone through my ICF, but there's a lot of coaches who do not get training as coaches. They think that, subject matter expertise is enough. And it is if you want to be a consultant, but being a coach is its own skill set and requires you to learn that skill set. You wouldn't go and say you were a doctor if you hadn't learned how to be a doctor. So
we hope not.
Stop saying you're a coach if you haven't actually learned how to be a coach. Okay, just saying, little segue there. You mentioned a book, and earlier you mentioned a book, and I didn't ask you. So, what was the book on transitions that you mentioned earlier?
It's by William Bridges, and it's called Transitions.
Okay, William Bridges. Okay, I didn't catch the first name, and it's one of the best ones that you would recommend from him.
I mean, it's pretty seminal work. I mean, there's been others that have been more recent, but I feel like they're a variation on his foundational piece. So Bruce Feidler, I think Feiler, has done more recent work, but I feel as though there's a lot of similarities there. So I feel like the way that Bridges laid it out, really resonates. So.
Okay, awesome. Great to get resources. And I have 2 more t-shirts out of you too, so I appreciate that. I love your quote about don't fill time, create fulfilling time. And out of pain, we find our path is a nice short way to say that. And so I think there's some lovely pearls of wisdom you've dropped as you've been talking. So tell me, what was the biggest, how old were you when you started your business?
It was about 6 years ago. So I'm 67 now. So I'm just like right around 60. Yeah.
Okay. What was the toughest thing about starting a business at 61 for you?
Being that CEO, like I think a lot of us think about, oh, I could do that, when we're working for someone else and we're accomplishing great things. Oh, I could do that and I could do it better. But then when the buck stops with you, then it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to really step into who you really are and not be looking around to, hey, it's me. So
Yeah.
I think that was pretty, it was just eye-opening,
And
and humbling, but also energizing, like challenge accepted. So,
okay, I love that. And what was the toughest part of it for you? Was it the financial side of it? Was it how do I do these things I don't know how to do? What part of that
yeah.
was the hardest?
I want to speak with your 89-year-old associate about technology, because if she at 89, I think that is a mindset.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like I have a lot of capabilities, but I think that's kind of been maybe the backroom stuff has been kind of the piece that has kind of held me back a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you're definitely not alone there. And I think one of the biggest prejudices is that older people aren't tech savvy and don't have a willingness or an ability to learn, neither of which is true. But it can be daunting because we didn't come up in the same way as this generation did with a phone glued to our hands, and have a different approach to technology as an enabler, not as being enabled by, which I think is a very different, I haven't said it that way before, but that's pretty good too.
T-shirt time,
No,
everyone.
I'm writing it down.
Write
Technically
it.
enabler.
Yeah,
Enabler.
no, you're right that, we don't have the hacks, we don't have the shortcuts. And so it takes a little bit longer. And I think then because it takes a little bit longer, we tend to hear the feedback or feel the
Yeah,
feedback or make up the feedback that, oh, then I'm not tech savvy. So the reality for me is there's just a lot.
yeah.
So I try to just take it
Yeah,
piece by piece.
a lot to the learning curve. What
Yeah.
was the most exciting thing you discovered as you moved into entrepreneurship for you?
Just being able to make such an impact with individual by individual, because in all the jobs that I've been, I was promoting a product or service that wasn't me, and
Mhm.
now I get to be part of it. And so that's just so, I mean, that's just everything,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Were you the one I was supposed to send the starfish story to?
No, but now I'm intrigued.
Okay, well, I had a call with someone and I told them I would send them the starfish story, and I cannot remember who it was. I've been trying to find out so I could send it. So if you have not seen it, again, go to YouTube and Google the starfish story, because I think it's really a valuable perspective for people who think, well, I don't want to change the world. I just want to, help a few people. I just want to make a bit of a difference. I just want to. It's that story about the little boy who's walking on the beach and he picks up a starfish and throws it back in the ocean. Go watch it. It's much more poignant and meaningful. But and along comes a man. There's millions of starfish on the beach that have washed in with the tide. The guy says, "Well, you can't save them all." He picks up another starfish, throws it, and he says, "But I made a difference to that one."
Mm,
And I think that that is a really valuable perspective because it can be what lights up our soul.
yeah,
Make a difference to that one is the thing that gives me juice in my life, is the
yeah,
difference that I get to go, okay, I helped, I made a difference. And my why is that I want you to get that you matter and live like you do, because I always wanted to get that I mattered. And so, if on my epitaph, on my tombstone, I wanted to say she was useful, I want to know that I was useful and helped makes a difference to that one, right?
mm,
And so I think figuring out our own version of made a difference to that one. Who is that one? What's the difference you want to make? And it doesn't have to be more than that.
right,
And that can create meaning, tremendous meaning in at any stage of life, but especially now.
yeah. Thank
So
you for sharing that. Yeah.
yes, thank you. And so tell us a little bit about how people can reach you, and you have a gift for them. What is that?
Yeah. So the name of my company is Conflux Retirement Coaching. So that's CONFLUX. And I invite you to come to my website, confluxretirementcoaching.com, or you can reach out to me at Wendy at confluxretirementcoaching.com. But I do have a little gift, and that is that there's a little retirement readiness mini workbook that I would like to offer to anyone that would like to requested. So in the show notes, there'll be a link for that. And this is where we take that concept of aim that I spoke about, the awareness, intention, motivation, and kind of break it down. And you have some exercises there. And then I'd love to hear from you. So I offer a complimentary coaching session. You'll have the link in that little workbook to contact me, and we can go through your reflections, because as Jeanette and I said, it's not a matter of just thinking, it's about getting into action. And so, because we know that hope without action remains hope. And we want to not just be hopeful, but we want to make things happen. And so I do hope that you'll go ahead and act and take advantage of that retirement workbook and contact me, and we can talk through, like I said, your reflections or obstacles or opportunities that you're seeing, really anything that will help you get underway. And then if we determine we want to work further together, then we have that opportunity too.
Beautiful. I love that. And can I offer a slight reframe on what you just offered?
Please.
Okay, I'm going to encourage you to take out the little mini workbook. It's just a little gift. I have a small gift for you. You have a big ass gift that is a very powerful workbook, because frankly, the power, I think, in really shifting and transforming is not getting better answers, it's asking better questions. So anything that gets you to ask better questions of yourself is an incredibly valuable tool and resource. So no more little, no more minis, no more none of that. A potentially life-altering gift you're giving people. One good question can change a trajectory. So yes,
I appreciate that.
I just got another little slogan. You said hope without action becomes hope, or just remains hope. I actually wrote down hope without action turns into despair. Because I think that when we sit on that dream and don't do it, it just widens the gap between what we know and what we're doing. And that's where suffering lives. So don't hope and not act is the bottom line on that. So some of that action can look like reaching out to Wendy, and give them your website again.
It's conflexretirementcoaching.com.
Okay, so there, or LinkedIn, you can find her, Wendy Leggett, and reach out to get support. And whatever stage you're at, pre-retirement, in the process, you're retired and you're thinking of what's next. And for those of you who are thinking of what's next, and it might include doing some kind of work, it might include starting a business, it might include going back to find a job, although good luck on that, but it might include that. Whatever that may be, please do check out maturepreneur.world. It is a community of people. The network we have there is an affordable membership community for those who are looking to refire, not retire, who are looking for a community that gets you, who gets that you still have so much value in you to give, that you can make a difference to that one, or that 1,000, or that 1 million, whatever you choose, and that there are practical ways to be supported in stepping into that. So call in support in the form of a great coach, in the form of a good community, in the form of a great mastermind. All of it will help you be who you want to be. And that's where we started, is with the being of retirement and whatever your next chapter is. So please do go check out maturepreneur.world so that you can be with your peeps in a positive, productive way. All right, now, Wendy, what's one last note you want to leave people with, one last thought when it comes to them and their next leap?
Yeah, it is really taking that responsibility for your life, being that CEO of you. And so I speak of retirement by design, not default. And so that's what I'd really wish for all of you, is that you really think about, what do I envision for myself in this next chapter, and then find a way to step into it.
Awesome. This has been one of the most powerful episodes that I've done on the show. I think this is such an empowering conversation. You're so clear, and both science and research based, and also very heart based and very purposely intentioned. So I really love what you bring to this conversation. Thank you for being here today, Wendy.
Oh, it's been delightful. I just have to say right back at you, because there's just so much depth here, and just what you're giving to your listeners is beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like we said, this is about action. So my hope is you took one tip or hint or step here that you heard, and you're going to action it by going and putting that step into your calendar right now. Don't even go pee. Don't go get a coffee. Don't do anything. Just put that step into your calendar right now so that you can take action on it right away. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.